Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Studio. My name is Adam. Today's episode is going to be called Cheap versus Expensive Marimba Mallets. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Adam, I've seen this segment before, like cheap versus expensive steaks, cheap versus expensive pastas on shows like BuzzFeed. Well, this is slightly different. I've decided to compare the cheapest pair of mallets I own and the most expensive pair of mallets I own to see whether there is really as much difference as the price suggests. So for our cheap pair of mallets, I have here the Balter Contemporary Series 84B. Otherwise known to me as the Balter Blue that isn't the Balter Blue. Now these are of course made by Balter Mallets, and Balter Mallets makes a lot of mallets that are super cheap. Balter Mallets caters to both ends of the market, and this is sort of towards the bottom. And for the expensive mallets, I have the one, the only Racing Red Wave Wraps. Now of course the wave wraps are made by Marimba One, and if you haven't already seen my review for them, you can check it out over here. But as I said in that video, the Marimba One wave wraps are the most expensive pair of marimba mallets you can buy from the US. They are super expensive, so that's why they will be today's expensive mallet. Now I know the 84Bs are not the cheapest marimba mallet you can buy, but they are considered pretty cheap compared to these. They are only $25.95 US per pair. So that's definitely towards the bottom end of the market. These on the other hand, the Lamborghinis of marimba mallets, this pair of wave wraps costs $86.95 US. $86.95 US. Young money, cash money. This is the most expensive pair of marimba mallets on the market. Yeah. That's like over 100 Australian dollars for a pair of mallets. That's insane. Other than that, they both have the same idea. They both have nice big heads. They're both designed to be duotonal. So I hope you agree we have a pretty fair fight on our hands, and I'm gonna compare every single aspect of these mallets with each other, and you can tell me whether you think it's worth it. Firstly, build quality. Now with our cheap mallet, the 84B, you'd expect there to be some sort of sacrifice made since it is only $25.95. Now you can see the wear pattern on this because I've used this for a long time, but if you squeeze it with the Studio Squeeze test, you'll see that these do flex quite a lot, and that's because it's a very loosely wrapped head. Definitely not a head that I would call super durable, but for $25.95 it's actually not that bad. You can also attribute that to the fact that this yarn is all wool, so it frays a lot faster, but it does give a bit of a warmer tone, which is nice. As you can see, we have the pine tree sticker and the silver sticker. That's not part of the mallet, that's just my decorations. The shaft is actually not too bad. It's quite smooth to the touch. It's not super lacquered, but it's definitely pretty close. I think it's very good for a $25.95 mallet. It's a less saturated color of birch. I don't know much about wood. I'm sure anyone who does know about wood can tell me what that means, but it feels pretty good to me. And if we look at this text, oh! It's engraved! That's right, even Balter at the price of $25.95 engraves their mallets. Towards the bottom we have an end that is relatively smooth, not too bad, but if you look at the shape of it, it's definitely been cut off like straight. It's not curved all the way around, it's definitely cut flat like that. But again, not a big deal, it's still pretty smooth, so it does pass the smooth ends make friends test. So overall, a pretty decent mallet, nothing to be disappointed about. Doesn't flex, doesn't break easily, it's real birch, and although the head is wrapped very loosely, that's not necessarily a bad thing for what it's for. Now let's look at our expensive wave wrap mallets, and I have to say it again. I have to say it. That head! I really like the top and bottom of the mallet. It's very tightly wound. I love this little jet engine design. It's so cool. But more importantly, it's more robust. There is nowhere to squeeze for the squeeze test, so it's not too bad. And it's a mix between synthetic and wool yarn, so you're gonna get a bit of a blended sound, and it's overall just a really solid head. Moving along to the shaft, and instantly this shaft definitely feels a little bit smoother. It's a little bit more yellow than the Balter shaft. But overall, the Marimba One shaft is definitely a little bit of a step up. The text is also engraved on the Marimba One model, of course. I would expect nothing less for $86.95. And the bottom of the shaft is very smooth. In fact, it's been rounded out very nicely. See that? This is another example of smooth ends make friends. So as we know, the wave wrap costs 3.5 times as much money as the 84Bs. So is the wave wrap 3.5 times better in terms of build quality? Not really. The only real difference between the two is the construction of the heads, so I would say, considering the price, they're pretty evenly matched. Moving along to ergonomics. Now, our 84B is relatively weighted, but not much. Despite the fact that the 84B is marketed as an extra long shaft, They're actually the same length as the wave wrap, so not sure what they're talking about there. But the 84B feels pretty alright in the hand. It does feel like the head is hollow. It kind of messes with me because the head is so big, but it's not heavy, which is definitely not a bad thing. If you're looking for a mallet that isn't that heavy, but has a nice big head, 84B. Just like Marimba 1 mallets usually are, the wave wrap is a bit heavier than most mallets. It's definitely got some sort of weight in the head, and because it's been so tightly wound and there's so much yarn, I assume that's what's making it more front heavy than the 84B. And I do feel a little bit more in control with the wave wrap. I feel like the head is more attached. I know that sounds really funny, but I feel like the head is more connected to the shaft than in the 84B, where it feels kind of hollow. Again, you probably wouldn't notice this unless you were holding these two side by side like I am now. But yeah, there is definitely a noticeable nice feeling in the wave wrap compared to the 84B. The real difference pops up when you start using these on the marimba. The 84B tends to have like a thunk when you hit it, whereas the wave wrap, because it's so tightly wound, it tends to bounce more. So it's got a lot more velocity. And depending on who you are, you might really like that bounciness, or you might like that ness of the 84B. So I can't really judge the feel of these because that again is based on personal preference, but I will say that the wave wrap is not 3.5 times better ergonomically speaking. That just doesn't make any sense. Which brings me to the sound test, and this is where the mallets will start to differentiate themselves, because at the moment they're kind of the same and they're not really showing their price difference very well. So I'll let you guys listen to the sound test and you tell me what you think in the comments below, and I'll let you know what I think afterwards. What did you think? Did you think the 84B was better? Did you think the wave wrap was better? Did you think my bark was terrible? General comments regarding the 84B. I think the 84B has more contact sound for sure. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just because this is starting to wear out, but it definitely has more of a sound to it. It doesn't really fully commit to having a warm tone, and it also doesn't really fully commit to having a clear tone. It's sort of in between. Overall, I'm not the biggest fan of the sound of the 84B, but it's not bad for the price. Now, the wave wrap, in my opinion, has more depth and more warmth. 3.5 times more warmth? Not really. It definitely feels more sonorous than the 84B. In my opinion, there is also less contact sound. There is not so much of that sound in the wave wrap because it's tighter wound and it's definitely more of a flat surface, whereas the 84B is very... And I feel like you can't really go wrong with the wave wrap sound, but that being said, it's not really 3.5 times better. I'll tell you what, I'll let you guys decide. Comment below if you are team 84B or if you're team wave wraps. Let me know in the comments below because I really want to know what you guys think. As always, please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. It means a lot to me. And thank you so much for all the support. If you have any suggestions for the show, or if you want to see more of a certain segment, or if you want to ask me any questions, just leave me a comment below and I'll definitely reply to you. As I've said to some of you guys in the comments below, if we reach 1,000 subscribers on this channel, I will answer questions for you guys and I will also have a giveaway. That's right, I'm going to be giving away free stuff to you guys. So please help me get to 1,000 subscribers. Share this video with all of your friends or anyone who's interested in percussion because I make videos for you guys. And as always, thank you so much for watching and I will see you next week for another episode of The Studio. Good night.